Hi everyone, welcome back. Today's video is a bridesmaid makeup tutorial, or really a makeup look that works for any special occasion. But specifically, I wanted to make a bridesmaid tutorial because not only will I be doing my own makeup for my wedding this spring, but my bridesmaids are incredible and all of them are also doing their own hair and makeup for my wedding. I think it can be extremely intimidating to try to do your makeup for a special occasion where you know you want your makeup to last a very, very long time if that's not something you are used to doing. So I wanted to make a tutorial to kind of dispel some myths and make it more approachable and easy to get a look like this that I think is perfect for a special occasion with makeup that you probably already own, just by incorporating a couple techniques and a few specific products that will make your makeup last much longer. And now let's go ahead and jump right into the video. Before we start actually applying any of the products or before I start showing you any techniques, I actually just wanted to mention a couple key tips that were super helpful for me when I was starting to kind of figure out how I was going to do my own wedding makeup and therefore use kind of my everyday makeup products in more of that like special occasion context. So my tip number one here is to build in really thin layers and only apply products where you actually need them. So by this, I mean, rather than maybe picking like a very thick consistency, full coverage foundation, you may want to pick something that's more of like a light or medium weight foundation and then use concealer to really spot conceal and correct the areas of your face that you want a little bit more coverage. This is really important and really helpful because it means that your makeup will look good both in person throughout the day as well as looking great in photos. So kind of taking the concealer and spot concealing will help really make sure photos look great, but then to make sure you also look really wonderful in person the whole day, because I'm sure you also want to feel great about yourself throughout the event. Having those like lighter weight layers will help to kind of mimic your actual skin and skin texture, I should say. So it'll look more natural and youthful if you have fewer lighter layers across your whole face. There are, of course, like medium to high coverage foundations that do really mimic that skin texture super well. So I'll be talking about a couple of those today, but just know that having like a full coverage foundation is by no means a necessity and sometimes can be a downfall of special occasion makeup. And then tip number two revolves around finding ways to make kind of your everyday makeup work for special occasions. So how can you increase the longevity and wear time of products that maybe aren't necessarily meant to be like a 24-hour foundation or something like that? And my three key products here that are gonna help with that are a good primer, a good setting powder, and a good setting spray. So I will really highlight those products in this tutorial today, but I just wanted to say that up front, that if you have those three products and you have a good one of those three products, those will really extend the wear of your makeup a ton, and you probably then don't have to go out and buy like special foundation, special concealer, special bronzer, blush, any of that, if you instead just invest in a couple key pieces that will help really make your existing makeup last longer. Of course, I'm going to have tips, tricks, techniques, etc. going on throughout this video while I'm applying the makeup, but I wanted to get those out of the way up front because I think they're some of the most common misconceptions about special occasion makeup. So I'm actually going to start out today's full face of bridesmaid makeup with one of those three key products that I just talked about. And this is my primer for the day. This is the Ordinary High Adherence Silicone Primer. And I love this primer for a few reasons. Number one, it's extremely affordable. I believe it's under $6. It's available at Sephora and Ulta, and also on The Ordinary's own website. And it's just a really amazing affordable option. So I love this because the silicone formula of this product means that it will fill in and smooth pores on your face, which will then allow your foundation to lay down more smoothly on top of that. And then the fact that it is a high adherence primer means that it's going to help your makeup grip to your face and stay there throughout the day. So I always just take a small dot about this big, that even might be a little too much on my fingers. And then I focus it a lot in my cheeks and my forehead because that's where I have the most obvious pores. So you'll have to take a look at your own face and kind of decide where it makes most sense for you to concentrate a product like this. But even if you want to put it across your whole face, it will help grip your makeup. When I am doing makeup for a special occasion, and especially for photographs, I like to put my concealer underneath of my foundation. On an everyday basis, I might switch that up. Sometimes I put the concealer on top of the foundation, sometimes below. But to get the best seamless blend from concealer to foundation, I find that putting the concealer on underneath is really, really beneficial. So the concealer that I'm using today is the e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer. I have the shade Light Peach. I really, really love this concealer because it gives me medium to full coverage, but it's still hydrating on my skin. So I have very dry skin, so that's something I need. You may or may not have to kind of focus on that when you're picking concealers for yourself. But I just know for me personally, if I'm going to have makeup on for a long day, having a hydrating formula makes sure that my skin looks, plump and fresh throughout the day and doesn't look dry and cakey by the nighttime. So I like to, again, build in small layers. So I put on maybe less than I think I might need to kind of cover this darkness under my eyes, and I can always add more. It's a lot harder to take it off than it is to put it on. And when I want to make sure that my concealer is going to give me the best coverage it can with the least product possible, I put it on and then I let it sit for about 30 seconds before I start blending it in. That just helps the formula of the concealer kind of solidify a little bit before you blend it so that it maintains that coverage a little bit better. And I just take any sort of small brush and I start to work that into my skin. I personally bring a little bit of the extra concealer in my brush across my nose just because that's the reddest part of my face. And so as I was mentioning in the beginning, rather than building up many, many layers of foundation or another product there, I try to conceal just a little bit of the redness beforehand so that I can put a nice even layer of foundation across my face and end up with the same amount of coverage everywhere. When I'm choosing a foundation for a special occasion, I always like to look for a light to medium coverage product. That's my personal preference, is to pick that lighter weight coverage and then really spot conceal after the fact if I need to, if I have say some blemishes or extra redness somewhere on my face. I can always go back in with a concealer after I have applied the foundation and just cover up those spots that really need the extra help. As I mentioned, because I have dry skin, one of my all-time favorites is the ColourPop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Hydrating Foundation. So this is a very, very hydrating foundation, and it is what I'll be using today. But I wanted to mention a couple other options that might be better for normal or oilier skin than mine. The Makeup Forever Ultra HD Foundation is a classic for a good reason. That's actually the foundation that I'll be wearing on my own wedding day, and it just is so flawless. It is one with the skin. It doesn't hardly look like you're wearing any product, and it provides the perfect medium coverage. I've heard great reviews of that foundation from people with all skin types, whether it's oily, normal, combination, dry, etc. So I think that that's a really foolproof route to go, and they have an incredible shade range. That Makeup Forever foundation is quite a bit pricier than this ColourPop and also this next one that I'm going to mention, but in my opinion, it's well worth the money. If you are looking for a more affordable option and you don't have dry skin like me, so the ColourPop might not be a good option for you, I would recommend checking out the Ordinary Coverage Foundation. It's super affordable. They have a fairly good shade range, and they've been talking about this whole year in 2021 about expanding the shade range as well. So I think that's coming on the horizon. And this foundation is, I'd say, on the high end of medium coverage. You can, of course, sheer it out a little bit by just using a little less product or mixing in a primer or moisturizer if it is a little too high coverage for your taste. but it can also be built up in a couple layers on your skin. So using a couple thin layers, like I mentioned earlier, you can build it up to a high coverage. So it's a really versatile product. It's so affordable and it performs insanely well, in my opinion, for the price point. But today I'll be using the Color Pop. So I just take like one pump on the back of my hand, about this much product. And then I'm going to be blending it in with a fairly dense brush today. I do also love this foundation with a sponge. Any of the foundations I mentioned today, you can use with a sponge and that'll help shear out the product a little bit, again, to build in those nice thin layers. But this one performs really well with a brush also. Because shade differences between your face and your neck are enhanced through photography, you'll want to make sure you also drag your foundation just down your neck a little bit. And then I also just put whatever's left on my brush over my ears. The remainder of the products that I'm using for this tutorial are all powders. So if you are using some sort of cream or liquid bronzer, blusher, highlight, do those before this next step. But if you're following along with me and using all powder cheek products, then go ahead and follow along with me and I'm going to powder my face. As I mentioned at the beginning, the primer, powder, and setting spray are kind of the three key ingredients here for long-lasting special occasion makeup. So this powder in particular, I love for my dry skin, but I also know that it's a huge hit with people with all different skin types. I love this powder in particular because it sets in your makeup, it locks it in, it helps to blur pores, it will increase the longevity of your makeup, but it doesn't look heavy and cakey and powdery. So I take a really small brush for underneath of my eyes, and then I'll switch to a little bit of a larger brush for the rest of my face. I do put a little bit more powder under my eyes and around my nose than I do, for example, on my cheeks. And that's just because that's where my makeup tends to wear off first on my own face. I'm going to add a little bit of definition back into my face with bronzer. Today I'm using the e.l.f. Primer Infused Bronzer in Always Sun-Kissed. This is a really nice affordable option if you don't already have a bronzer you love, and this lasts a really, really long time. Again, light layers and blending here are your friend. So I swirl my brush in the product and then I tap off the excess so that when I apply it to my face, I'm applying just a little bit at a time. Now, bronzer and contour are not the same thing. I don't contour on a regular basis, and I also don't ever do it for special occasions just because I already have a fairly pronounced cheekbone line. But if you want to contour, typically you would do that before bronzer. And then you take your bronzer and you actually put it up a little higher on your cheeks, kind of where the sun would hit you. So it's not so much about getting a chiseled line below your cheeks, it's really just adding kind of the dimension back into your face. Super important for special occasions is to make sure that you are getting your bronzer all the way back kind of into your hairline so there's not like a light ring of your skin tone around the edges. I also personally like a little bit of bronzer right along my jawline and down my neck again for shade matching. And hopefully you can see the huge difference that that made already. If you look at the side of my face with no bronzer, it looks much more flat, much more one dimension. If you look at the side with a bronzer, you can see like the curve of my forehead. My cheeks look a little more lifted and awake. Bronzer is an essential aspect of any makeup that's going to be photographed, in my opinion, because it adds so much depth and dimension back into your face. And that will only help enhance your features on camera. One of my favorite special occasion makeup hacks is to put on highlighter beneath your blush. That will make the highlighter really look like it's actually a lit from within glow. It will look super natural and it will look stunning in photographs. So today I have the Essence Pure Nude Highlighter, which in my opinion is a really beautiful like candlelit kind of glow. It's not going to be super sparkly or shiny or glowy. It's more so about enhancing your natural features. So I personally like it because you can build it up a little bit, but it's also just going to really, really naturally enhance your cheekbones and temples. So I always place it here on my cheekbones, the highest point of my cheeks. And you can see that does add a lot of glow, but it's not like a stripe of color or a stripe of shimmer across my cheeks. It really looks more natural. I also take it up here on my temples just a little bit so that it's not too much of like localized glow, right? Because no one's skin is like only glowy on their cheeks if it is like a natural glow. So I like to kind of mimic that look on my forehead as well. I put a little bit down my nose and across the tip of my nose also. And last up for cheeks, I'm going to layer a blush kind of over top of both that bronzer and that highlighter, kind of to fill that gap and to blend everything seamlessly. So today I'm using the Kaleido Cosmetics Skin Blush in the shade Prima Donna. This does have a bit of shimmer in it. So if you have a lot of texture on your cheeks or anything like that that you don't want to emphasize, you may want to steer clear of this exact blush. But the reason I chose this is because I think it's a fairly good neutral pink blush for something like a wedding where you are wanting to enhance your features, make sure your makeup shows up on camera. So you want something that's a little bit of more of a brighter tone like this. And I don't think a little extra glow hurts on a special occasion. I personally focus my blush on kind of the back half of my cheeks. That's just an everyday routine for me. It's how I prefer makeup to kind of emphasize my features. So just put blush wherever you would normally put blush. And if you're not sure where, just play around with placement a little bit. Everybody likes their blush in a different spot. And now we are looping around to a setting spray. I know this full face of makeup is not done, but this is the part of my makeup routine where I like to apply setting spray. The reason for that is it's not going to mess with any of my eyeshadow if I happen to get like larger droplets on my face than I intended. I don't really need to lock in my lip color with a setting spray. It won't really make an impact on that. Today, and for all special occasions, I use the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray. This is a cult classic for a reason. It truly, truly does lock in your makeup and make it last so much longer than without this product. I don't use it on a daily basis for makeup because it does have alcohol in it, so just be cautious of how that will interact with your particular skin, but I love it for special occasion makeup that needs to last a long time. I just spritz 3 to 4 pumps across my face and let it dry before I move on to any of my next steps. Next up, we are going to work on eyes. If you've ever had your makeup professionally done or seen people who've had their makeup professionally done, I feel like the eyeshadow always looks really intimidating, at least to me. That's something that felt really intimidating when I started kind of exploring how to do bridal or bridesmaids makeup myself. But there are a few key tips that I'll go over in this video that will hopefully be very, very helpful for you. And the first of those is to use an eyeshadow primer. So again, looping back to those 3 key ingredients, this is essentially just a different version of kind of a product like a face primer, but the purpose of this is to really prevent creasing and fading of eyeshadows. So my favorite is the Milani eyeshadow primer. I love this primer specifically because it is both affordable and effective. I think it's such a good price point for a product that really, really increases the wear time of my eyeshadow. I just take a tiny dot about this big and spread that between both eyelids. So if you buy this eyeshadow primer, this tube will last you a very long time because you barely need any product. And I always just go ahead and blend all the way up to my eyebrow because you never know exactly where you're gonna place eyeshadow, and I'd rather just put down a little more primer than necessary. For eyeshadow, I would recommend anything that's like neutral brown tones. Today I'm going to be using the Natasha Denona Mini Nude palette, and the key elements here that I think this palette really encapsulates well are a crease color that is a couple shades darker than your natural skin tone. So for me, this one here is great. An outer corner color used to kind of deepen up and add a little bit more dimension and smokiness to the look. A lid shade, which should be kind of a mid-tone shade again. So for me, this palette actually has two. I can use either this nice coppery one or this one that's a little bit more neutral toned. And then I also like to have an inner corner highlighter shade. And for me, this one in the middle is perfect for that. If you don't have an inner corner highlighter shade in your particular palette or eyeshadow collection already, you can always use your face highlighter as an inner corner shade as well. So step one is to take a fluffy-ish brush and dip that into the nice crease color. So again, usually a matte shade about 2 shades deeper than your skin tone is great for this. Tap off your brush and then place that color into your crease and also right above your crease. Again, nice light layers here is the name of the game. So once I got that first layer down, I decided I wanted more impact. So I'm just going back in again with more product on my brush, but the same exact technique. Once I have that color down, I like to wipe off my brush all the way and just go over the edges with no product so that I can kind of nicely blend that color. Switching over to a less fluffy brush, this one's a little bit more dense. I'm dipping into that deepest shade in the palette, and again, tapping the extra off my brush. I'm just patting this on the very outer corner of my eyes, and then pulling a little ways in until about halfway across my eyelid. Then I'll switch back to that first brush I was using, wipe it off again just to make sure there's nothing on there, and I'm gonna blend where those two colors meet. Next up, I'm taking the lid shade that I want, so in this case I want this coppery one, putting it right on my finger, and then I'm just going to tap it across my whole eyelid. Last up, using a nice small brush, I am dipping into that nice light shade for the inner corner highlight. One thing I always do for a special occasion eye makeup that I don't do necessarily on an everyday basis is actually put eyeshadow underneath my eyes as well. So rather than a harsh line of eyeliner or something like that beneath your eyes, using something softer that will still provide definition, like eyeshadow, is your best bet for photos. My favorite technique for this is to bounce back and forth between the crease shade and the outer corner shade that we used, so that mid-tone and deep colored brown. Get a little bit of both on my brush, tap off the extra, and then just run that right beneath my eyes, connecting it up to the shadow above. I hope you can see on this eye that has the shadow beneath it versus this one that doesn't, how much more defined my eye looks, but without any harsh lines from liners. For special occasion brows, I have 2 different suggestions. The first is to fill in your brows with some sort of brow pencil, and then follow that up with a clear brow gel to lock everything into place. The other option is to just use a tinted brow gel right off the bat. Depends on your brows and kind of how you prefer them to look, but sometimes using a tinted brow gel is enough. Regardless, I would highly recommend not skipping brow products for special occasions. As I've mentioned throughout this video, cameras make features much less defined in photos than they look in person. So making sure that your brows are filled in evenly is really essential to making sure that the photos come out great, as well as feeling more confident while you're in person with everyone. Today I'm using the brow pencil and clear gel, so I'm gonna just fast forward through this part because it's not super interesting. I do have a full tutorial that I can link up in the corner if you're curious how I do my brows. If you will be wearing false lashes for the wedding, I highly recommend using a liquid black liner to create a thin line on just your top lashes for the band of the actual lashes to sit. So I'm gonna do that quickly. I'll probably speed through this as well, just because it's not that interesting to watch me apply eyeliner. And then I am going to pop off, do mascara, apply some false lashes, and then I'll be back to talk about which lashes I'm using and why. If you're interested in learning how I do my false lashes on myself, I have a video on that and I'll link it up in the corner. It's just a little bit too much to include in this tutorial today. Okay, I'm back, but without false lashes because I thought it would be valuable to show you what this makeup looks like with just mascara. So you can see, my lashes are defined, but they're not necessarily like adding anything to kind of the drama or the specialness of this look. And I also wanted to show how thin of a line I used for my liner. So you really just need like the smallest, thinnest black line there for the lash to lay down on. I figure I might as well also tell you while I'm here what lashes I'm going to use. So I'm going to be using the Ardell number 110s. I think these are really, really wonderful lashes for people like bridesmaids who don't necessarily need like a huge dramatic lash, but who still definitely want that nice strong definition on their eyes for photos and to just feel a little more special that day. All right, back with that just little bit of extra added drama with the lashes, and we are on to lips, and that's the final step. So my biggest tip here is to use a lip liner even if you don't normally use a lip liner. I really love the NYX Slim Lip Pencils. This shade Nude Pink is a really great shade for me for underneath of nude or pink toned lipsticks. So I just line my lips with this, and that will help increase the lasting power of the lipstick you apply, but it also means that if your lipstick starts to fade throughout the night, you will still have a base color underneath. Now, I have two recommendations for lip colors. But just a word of warning, in my experience with weddings in the past, the most common thing that a bride might have a strong preference on for bridesmaids makeup is a lip color. So a lot of times brides like to have everybody in a coordinating lipstick. So just check first with the bride that you are a bridesmaid for before rushing out to buy any of my recommendations here. But I wanted to provide one suggestion on the nude lip side of things, so like a nice warm nude brown, and one on the pink side of things, just so you can pick one that flatters your skin tone best. My nude lipstick recommendation is the shade Vegas from Kosas. I think in particular this with these nice warm brown tones in the eyes would be really, really beautiful for a wedding. But the lip color that I'll be using today, and my top recommendation for someone who wants a really comfortable but long-lasting lipstick, is this right here. This is the Real Hair Cosmetics Girl Power lipstick, and this is just a beautiful kind of like deep pink mauve shade. It's going to look gorgeous in photos and in person. It's a nice comfortable satin finish, so it's not going to dry your lips out, but this lasts so long. It lasts almost as long as like my liquid lipsticks do. So to me, this is a perfect contender for special occasions. So this is the finished look. I hope this was helpful for you today, and if you enjoyed it, please consider giving it a thumbs up, leaving me a comment down below, and subscribing before you go today if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.